When I read the words, "Don't worry, she'll never find out, she's too naive to notice," my hand went cold around the phone. The phone wasn't mine. It belonged to her, my husband's coworker, the woman who'd just left it charging on my kitchen counter after pretending to come by to help with a work project. That was the moment everything inside me split in two. My husband's voice echoed from the next room, joking with her like nothing was wrong, and I stood there, silent, reading every lie he'd ever told me, straight from her own device. My name is Hannah Reed, 34, marketing consultant, wife of 8 years. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple, the house in Denver's quiet suburbs, the successful husband, the smiling wife who made everything look effortless. But behind that image was a man who chipped away at my confidence until I second-guessed my own shadow. Instead of screaming, I decided to play his game better than he ever could, using patience as my weapon. The phone buzzed again in my palm. Another message from Mark, my husband, appeared on Mia's screen. "She's making dinner right now, completely clueless. This is almost too easy." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't cry. Something else stirred inside me, something cold and focused. I heard footsteps coming toward the kitchen. Quickly, I placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it, face down on the counter. When Mia walked in, I was stirring pasta sauce like nothing had happened. "Coffee before you leave?" I asked, my voice steady even though my hands wanted to shake. She glanced at her phone, then at me, studying my face for any sign I knew. I smiled warmly. "You've been such a help to Mark with this project," I said. Her shoulders relaxed. She had no idea I'd just read every word they'd exchanged for the past 3 months, every intimate detail revealed. After Mia left, Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind while I finished cooking. "You're the best, Han," he whispered against my hair. So trusting, so sweet. Those words used to make me feel loved. Now they felt like insults wrapped in false affection. I turned and kissed his cheek, forcing myself not to pull away. "That's what marriage is about, right? Trust?" I said. He smiled that easy smile I'd fallen for years ago. "Exactly. I'm lucky to have you." I watched him walk away to wash up for dinner, and I whispered to myself in the empty kitchen, "You have no idea what's coming." That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and began planning. Every detail had to be perfect. Every move calculated. He'd underestimated me for the last time. His arrogance would become his downfall, and I would orchestrate it perfectly. The next morning, I sat at my laptop with coffee and opened a new document. I titled it Project Freedom and began typing everything I remembered from Mia's phone. Dates, messages, pet names he'd never used with me. My fingers moved quickly, precisely. I wasn't angry anymore, I was focused. Mark walked past, already dressed for work. "Working on a new campaign?" he asked cheerfully. I nodded without looking up. "Something like that. Something big." He kissed the top of my head. "That's my girl. Always busy." After he left, I pulled out my own phone and took screenshots of our joint bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents. I created a separate cloud account under my maiden name, Hannah Brooks, and uploaded everything there. If this was war, I needed ammunition. And I was just getting started with my arsenal of evidence against him now. I called my sister Kate during my lunch break. "Can you come over this weekend?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Sure, everything okay?" she asked, concern creeping into her tone. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to spill everything right then. But I knew Kate would want me to confront Mark immediately, and I wasn't ready for that yet. "Just need some sister time," I said instead. When she arrived Saturday afternoon, she studied my face carefully. "You look different," she observed. "Not bad, just sharper somehow." I poured us both wine and smiled. "Maybe I'm finally growing a backbone." Kate laughed, but her eyes stayed serious. "Hannah, whatever's happening, don't let him take your kindness for weakness." I clinked my glass against hers. Too late for that. but not too late to take it back. Kate squeezed my hand, sensing something big was coming soon. I started noticing everything with new clarity. The way Mark's phone was always face down. How he showered immediately when he came home from late meetings. The expensive shirts I'd never seen him buy. Each detail was a piece of evidence I filed away mentally. One evening, I asked him casually, "Do you ever think about being dishonest?" He looked up from his dinner, surprised. "What kind of question is that?" I shrugged, cutting my chicken carefully. "Just curious. Like, do you think people can hide big secrets from the ones they love?" His fork paused midair for just a second, a tiny tell. "I guess some people can," he said slowly. "But not us. We tell each other everything, right?" I met his eyes and smiled. "Right. Everything." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I swallowed it down with my wine. His nervous laugh told me he knew something had shifted between us. I invited Mia over again 2 weeks later. "Mark mentioned you might need help with that presentation," I lied smoothly on the phone. She hesitated, I could hear it in the silence. "Oh, sure. I can stop by Thursday." When she arrived, I had cookies baking and tea ready. Playing the perfect, unsuspecting wife. We sat at my kitchen table, and I watched her fidget with her phone, constantly checking it. "You and Mark make a great team at work," I said, my voice friendly. She relaxed slightly. "He's a good mentor." Mentor. The word almost made me laugh. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, I noticed she'd left her phone on the table. Face up this time. Another message from Mark glowed on the screen. "Is she suspicious?" I quickly grabbed my phone and took a photo of hers, capturing the message thread visible on her unlocked screen. The evidence kept building, piece by damning piece in my collection. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the messages I'd seen, the timeline of their affair forming in my mind. It had started 6 months ago at a company conference in Chicago. Mark had told me he was rooming with his colleague Tyler. But the messages revealed he'd shared a suite with Mia instead. I remembered that weekend clearly. I'd been home with the flu, and Mark had called me every night saying how much he missed me. The entire time, he'd been with her. I got out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and went to the guest room. I sat in the dark and let myself feel it all, the betrayal, the humiliation, the rage. But instead of breaking down, I felt something else building. Determination. He'd made me feel small for years, always correcting me, dismissing my opinions. Not anymore. This time, I would be the one making all the important decisions. I started documenting everything in a detailed timeline. I cross-referenced our credit card statements with Mark's work trips. February 14th, he'd told me he had to work late on Valentine's Day. The credit card showed dinner for 2 at an expensive steakhouse across town. March 3rd, another late meeting. Hotel room charged to our card. April 20th, supposedly playing poker with friends. Flower delivery to an address I didn't recognize. I felt sick looking at the pattern, but I kept going. Each discovery made my case stronger. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, something I should have done years ago. Slowly, I began transferring my consulting income there. Money Mark had always insisted I deposit into our joint account for simplicity. I wasn't going to leave this marriage broken. I was leaving prepared. My mother had always told me to have my own money. Mark started noticing changes in me, though he couldn't identify what exactly had shifted. "You seem distant lately," he commented one evening while we watched television. Not really watching, he was on his phone, probably texting her. "Do I?" I asked mildly, not looking away from the screen. "I feel fine." He frowned. "We barely talk anymore." I wanted to laugh at the irony. We hadn't really talked in years. He talked at me, told me his opinions, corrected my thoughts. But now he noticed my silence? "Maybe we should plan a vacation," he suggested. "Reconnect." I turned to face him fully. That sounds nice. Where were you thinking? He shrugged. I don't know, somewhere tropical? I smiled. Let me look into it. What I didn't say was that I was already planning a trip, just not with him. And it wouldn't be tropical. It would be to my lawyer's office downtown next week. I researched divorce attorneys carefully, reading reviews and looking for someone specializing in cases involving infidelity and hidden assets. I found Patricia Lawson, a sharp woman in her 50s with an impressive track record. I made an appointment using my maiden name and met her during my lunch break at her downtown office. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I opened my laptop and showed her my Project Freedom folder. Her eyebrows rose as she scrolled through the evidence. You've been thorough, she said with approval. This is excellent documentation. I'd also brought financial records showing the money Mark had spent on his affair. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, Patricia explained. And infidelity can impact the division of assets, especially when marital funds were used for the affair. I felt a weight lift from my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I had a case. A strong one that would change everything. Mia texted Mark one evening while we were having dinner, I miss you. When can we see each other again? His phone was on the table between us, face down, but I'd installed tracking software on our cell phone plan earlier that week. Every text he received came to my email simultaneously. I watched him check his phone, smile slightly, then put it away. Work? I asked innocently. Yeah, just a colleague with a question. The ease with which he lied was almost impressive. I stood and cleared my plate, bending to kiss his cheek as I passed. You work so hard for us, I said sweetly. That night in bed, he reached for me, trying to be intimate. I let him, playing my part. But inside, I felt nothing except cold calculation. Every kind gesture I made toward him now was strategic. Keep him comfortable. Keep him unsuspecting. Let him think he still had control over me and our marriage. I ran into Mia at the grocery store, or rather, I'd followed her there after seeing her social media post about needing to pick up ingredients for dinner. Mia. What a coincidence, I said brightly, pushing my cart toward her in the produce section. She looked startled, almost guilty. Oh, hey Hannah. How are you? We chatted about mundane things, the weather, work, recipes. I was charming and friendly, asking about her life with genuine seeming interest. You should come to dinner sometime, I suggested. Mark talks about how talented you are at the office. I'd love to get to know you better. She looked uncomfortable. That's really nice, but I wouldn't want to impose. I touched her arm lightly. You wouldn't be imposing at all. I insist. I could see the panic in her eyes. She managed a weak smile. I'll check my schedule. As I walked away, I knew I'd planted seeds of doubt in her mind. Mark's birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. Usually, I planned elaborate celebrations. Surprise parties, thoughtful gifts, the works. This year, I planned something different. I told him I was organizing a small dinner party at our house. Just close friends, I said. Nothing fancy. What I didn't tell him was that I'd invited Mia. When he saw her name on the guest list while I was addressing invitations, he went pale. Why is Mia coming? He asked, trying to sound casual. I looked at him with innocent eyes. Well, you spend so much time with her at work, I thought it would be nice to include her in our personal circle. Plus, she's been so helpful with your projects. He couldn't argue without revealing something. Right, that's thoughtful, he managed. For the next 2 weeks, I watched him become increasingly nervous. He started fights about nothing, maybe hoping to cancel the party. But I stayed calm, cheerful, planning every detail meticulously for maximum impact. The night of Mark's birthday dinner arrived. I'd cooked his favorite meal, decorated the dining room beautifully, and dressed in the blue dress he loved. I was the picture of the devoted wife. Mia arrived last, looking uncomfortable in a tight black dress. I greeted her warmly at the door, hugging her like an old friend. "I'm so glad you could make it," I said loudly enough for Mark to hear from the living room. Throughout dinner, I watched them carefully avoid looking directly at each other. Every time I mentioned how grateful I was for Mia's help at Mark's office, they both shifted in their seats. When it was time for cake, I stood to make a toast. "To my husband, who always teaches me that appearances can be deceiving," I said, raising my glass. "And to all our friends who help reveal the truth." Everyone drank, but Mark and Mia looked like they might be sick. The evening felt like slow torture, for them. For me, it was power and control I'd never experienced before. After the party, Mark was quiet, almost sullen. "That was weird," he finally said as we cleaned up. "What was weird?" I asked, rinsing plates. "The way you kept." "I don't know, the way you talked tonight. It felt off." I turned to face him, my expression confused. "Off how?" "I was celebrating your birthday." He shook his head. "Never mind. I'm probably just tired." But he wasn't tired, he was paranoid. And paranoid people make mistakes. Over the next few days, his behavior became more erratic. He'd snap at me over small things, then apologize profusely. He'd check his phone constantly, deleting messages immediately after reading them. But what he didn't know was that I'd cloned his phone data 2 weeks earlier. Every deleted message appeared in my private cloud storage. Every call was logged. He was digging his own grave, and I was simply handing him the shovel with a smile on my face. Mia cracked first. She called Mark in a panic. I saw the record of their 20-minute call at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The next day, she texted him, "Your wife knows something. I can feel it. We need to stop." His response made me laugh out loud in my car. "She doesn't know anything. Hannah's not smart enough to figure this out. Trust me, I've been married to her for 8 years. She's completely clueless." I took a screenshot and added it to my evidence folder with a note, Exhibit 47, Mark's assessment of my intelligence. Let him underestimate me. Let him think he was safe. The higher his confidence, the harder his fall would be. That evening, I was especially sweet to him. I made his favorite dinner, wore my hair the way he liked, laughed at his jokes. And every kind gesture was another nail in the coffin he didn't see coming at all. I scheduled the final meeting with Patricia for a Monday morning. I brought printed copies of everything: messages, financial records, photos, hotel receipts, restaurant bills. "This is one of the most documented cases I've ever seen," she said, impressed. "Your husband used marital funds extensively for this affair. That works strongly in your favor." We went over the divorce filing strategy. "I recommend we file and have him served at his office," Patricia suggested. "Maximum impact, and it prevents him from hiding or transferring assets beforehand." I thought about Mark opening those papers in front of his colleagues, maybe in front of Mia. The public humiliation he'd tried to protect himself from. "Perfect," I agreed. "When can we proceed?" Patricia smiled, the smile of a lawyer who knew she had a winning case. "I'll have the papers ready by Friday. We can serve him Monday morning. Just 4 more days of pretending." I could manage that with ease and grace. That weekend, Mark suggested we have a date night. Maybe he sensed something, or maybe guilt was finally catching up to him. We went to the restaurant where we'd had our first date 9 years ago. He held my hand across the table, looking at me with what might have been genuine emotion. "I don't tell you enough how much you mean to me," he said. I squeezed his hand gently. "That's sweet of you to say." He took a deep breath. "I know I haven't been the best husband lately. I get caught up in work, distracted. But I want you to know that you're my priority. Always have been." The lies flowed so smoothly from his mouth. How many times had he practiced this speech? "I love you, Mark," I said, meaning it in past tense, mourning what I'd once felt. "I know," he replied confidently. And that was his problem, he thought he knew. But he knew nothing at all about what was coming next. Monday morning came bright and clear. I woke up before my alarm, nervous energy making sleep impossible. Mark left for work at his usual time, 7:30. He kissed me goodbye like always. Have a great day, he called from the door. You too, I called back, knowing his day was about to become very different. At 9 a.m., Patricia texted me, paper served. He's been notified. My phone rang 15 minutes later. Mark, his voice shaking with rage. What the hell did you do? He shouted. I filed for divorce, I said calmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You can't be serious. Over what? We can work through whatever, read the filing, Mark. Everything you need to know is there. Hannah, please, let's talk about this rationally. I am being rational. Maybe for the first time in years. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief and vindication at last. Mark came home early, bursting through the door with the divorce papers in his hand. This is insane, he yelled. You're making accusations based on nothing. I stood in the kitchen, completely calm. I'm making accusations based on 8 months of evidence. Would you like me to read your messages to Mia? I have them all. His face went white. How did you? Her phone, Mark. She left it at our house twice. I read every single message. Every lie you told me. Every cruel thing you said about me. He sank onto the couch, the papers falling from his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I asked. Were you planning to tell me? Or just let me find out when you moved out? He put his head in his hands. I don't know. You didn't think I'd figure it out, I finished for him. Because I'm too dumb, right? Too naive? Too clueless? His silence was answer enough for both of us to understand completely. The next few days were tense but civil. Mark tried various approaches, anger, bargaining, guilt-tripping. None of them worked. If you go through with this, you'll lose everything, he threatened. I handed him a printed spreadsheet. Actually, according to Colorado law and the evidence I've compiled, I'll keep the house, which is titled in my name from my inheritance. I'll get at least 60% of marital assets since you spent our money on your affair. And I'll keep my dignity. He stared at the numbers, realizing perhaps for the first time that I'd been planning this carefully. You've been plotting this for months, he said, almost admiringly. I've been protecting myself for months, I corrected. There's a difference. He tried one last manipulation. What about us? 8 years together means nothing? I met his eyes without flinching. It meant everything to me. That's why this hurts. But you made your choice when you told her I was too dumb to figure it out. The words hung between us like poison in the air we breathed. The divorce proceedings moved quickly with all my documentation. Mark's lawyer tried to argue for a more equal split, but Patricia demolished those arguments with the evidence I'd collected. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, gifts, all purchased with marital funds. Screenshots of messages where Mark mocked me to Mia. Financial records showing he'd hidden purchases and created secret accounts. Your client violated the marital contract and depleted marital assets for an extramarital affair, Patricia argued in mediation. My client is entitled to compensation for that betrayal and financial misconduct. Mark's lawyer looked defeated. They settled for terms heavily in my favor. I got the house, 70% of savings, my full retirement account, and Mark had to reimburse me for half the money he'd spent on Mia. His lawyer tried one last time to negotiate. These terms are very punitive. Patricia smiled coldly. These terms are very fair. Justice had arrived, finally, after months of careful planning and strategic patience throughout. 3 months after filing, the divorce was finalized. Mark moved into a small apartment across town. Mia apparently ended things with him once the affair became public. She didn't want the drama or the reputation damage. I heard through mutual friends that Mark told people I'd overreacted, that it had been just a minor mistake. But most of our friends had seen the evidence I'd carefully shared with a few trusted people. They knew the truth. Kate came over the day after the divorce was final. "How do you feel?" she asked, opening a bottle of champagne. I thought about it carefully. "Free," I finally said. "Lighter. Like I can finally breathe." She raised her glass. To Hannah Reid, who was never too dumb to figure it out. I clinked my glass against hers. To Hannah Reid, who was just smart enough to wait. The celebration felt earned, deserved, and absolutely perfect in every single way possible. 6 months later, I was living a completely different life. I'd started my own marketing consultancy, working from home with clients I chose. I'd redecorated the house, painting walls in colors Mark had always vetoed, hanging art I loved. I'd reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Some days were hard, grief for what I'd thought we had, anger at the years I'd lost. But mostly, I felt peace. Real, deep peace that came from knowing my own strength. I'd survived betrayal and manipulation. I'd trusted myself enough to plan, to wait, to execute my escape perfectly. The night Mark's mistress had left her phone on my counter had felt like the worst moment of my life. But it had actually been the beginning of my freedom. He'd told her I was too dumb to find out. Turns out, I was just smart enough to use their arrogance against them. And that made all the difference in my new, beautiful life ahead of me.